Hello and welcome. Thank you for watching our presentation today. The law offices of McLaughlin & Associates and McLaughlin Mediation and Consulting focus on helping small to mid-sized businesses grow and thrive. You started your business because of your passion. Let us help you with that vision. We offer a variety of legal and human resources services. Check out our website for more details at www.ma-lawpc.com. And now, on to our presentation.
Well, good morning. Welcome to this next presentation on contested estates. My name is Kenneth McLaughlin. I'm the managing attorney of our law firm, McLaughlin Associates. We do litigation, we do transactional work, and one of the areas of our practice is contested estates. A lot of probate attorneys are not comfortable doing contested estates. They want to do the uncontested estates. They go and open up the probate estate, kind of keep it open for a year and then close it. But because I have a background in commercial litigation in particular, contested estates actually goes in well together. There's two components of the contested estates, and we're going to talk about those. One is just the nuts and bolts of it, regular litigation, and how do you do that? And that's where the commercial litigation really comes in. A lot of times there's financial disputes, there's a lot of heavy motion practice, you're moving at a very quick pace. But then there's another side of it, which is the emotional side of it. And what typically people think about is sort of like the bulldog attorney who kind of keeps going down like this. That doesn't always work out very well in a contested estate. You have to balance between being aggressive in the sense of moving cases along, but not being aggressive when you need to work with people's emotions, because a lot of times people, there's years and years that are built up that are causing these issues. So what are various factors that contribute to family litigation? So the first heading is those first generation entrepreneurs who control the assets. Okay, so that would be your first generation business owners. And many times they actually are rags to riches stories. So in family owned businesses, typically someone wanted to do something on their own, or they left corporate America and they decided to kind of take a chance. And I have stories, for example, of clients who started hot dog stands and now are like major importers. And it was unexpected, and they're very humble, but what happens is that as they sort of start with those humble beginnings and it grows, the next generation got used to all the wealth, and there's this kind of disconnect because the parent is always expecting everybody to do what they're supposed to do, sort of they kind of, you always work hard, but then you have the next generation who's like, well, we've always had this. And a sense of entitlement kind of creeps in. And so the problem that runs into is when you have the parent who's used to just working in the business and who hasn't really trained the next generation, maybe they've given them jobs and not really shown it, when they unexpectedly pass away, or even if they don't plan for the next generation doesn't know what to do. And sometimes it's even as bad as the spouse who's left behind doesn't know what to do and is battling with children who think they know better. And so those are the two factors I talk about. It's the control by the parent, and then it's the limited involvement of the children. The second area that you'll face are real estate issues, and they have to do with family real estate. So one is family farms. So there's a sentimentality that goes with those types of real estate. Everybody's used to going there. They have the extended family that goes there. And when you go there, it's usually some parent who's there, sometimes maybe even a grandparent, and everybody kind of goes around that, and then that person's gone. And the connection that you had with that family member, whether it be a parent or grandparent, is gone, and the reasons to go back to that farm are no longer there. And so when people go back, what you'll see is in the year or two after that, suddenly these underlying tensions sort of rear their ugly head, and then there gets to be a point at people who are saying, do we really want to keep the farm? Right? So you have one group of people who are really sentimental and want to hold it, the other who are like, look, I'm in a different part of the country, I don't have time for this. And so you run into those conflicts, and so those underlying tensions rear their ugly head and they come up, and the farm becomes the battleground. It's not even about the farm, it's all the memories of the farm, it's all the issues with the family in the farm. You'll say the same thing with a vacation home. Say, someone decides that they have a vacation home. Maybe it could be in a place in Michigan. It could be in Hawaii. It could be in Florida. Wherever it is, again, everybody's used to congregating, and now the reason for that is gone. The thing you won't see a fight over is usually the family home. Okay? Even a really nice family home, it's a different kind of connection. People usually are at home. They leave home, so there's already a disconnect from that. It's these situations where people are away and they come back and they congregate, and it sort of is what their family really is. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. Okay. The top one I'm going to talk about has to do with assets. So you would think that significant investments are a true battleground, but they're really not. If it's cash to be liquidated, hardly anybody ever fights about that. We're going to talk about circumstances where there's theft issues, but aside from that, people don't usually fight, even if there were millions of dollars, because you can cash out. No one's going to spend a lot of time fighting over those types of things. Sometimes you run into problems with royalty type things, and I say like natural gas and oil and those types of things. And the reason is because many times they were inherited or they were kind of sitting there passively and no one knew what to do with it. And all of a sudden they're there and you get misunderstandings of what the value is. One person's like, oh, it's on oil, it must be worth a lot. And the other person's like, that's not worth anything. It's not worth the hassle. They don't want to deal with the contract. So sometimes you get into almost like business disputes with people. So you don't see those go on and on and on, but they can cause some issues. Heirlooms, however, so you'd think the first two would be the battleground, but they're not. It's the last one that's the issue. It's the heirlooms. I'm not kidding. I had a case where there was a battle over a teddy bear that cost $20,000 by the time it was all done. No one knew it was going to cost $20,000, but it did because they were fighting over this teddy bear. You can imagine heirlooms, for example, quilts. Those types of things where people are fighting over. American flags are big fights. Rings, wedding rings, or rings from colleges, those types of things that have this kind of very close sentimentality, or they have value in the family, even though they may not have an inherent value. People will battle over those types of things. So if you have family heirlooms, and already you're starting to see people saying, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine, that you have a sense that if someone passes away, whoever owns that, there's going to be a problem. So what I tell parents in particular when they have those, I said, if you have an item that you want to give to somebody in particular, it's better not to leave it through a will, but it's actually better to gift it to them in the appropriate circumstance. So if you earmark that for someone's wedding, for example, when they become of age, even if they're a teenager, you say, I've always wanted you to have this for your wedding. And it avoids a lot of those issues because after the fact, people will impose their own desires into what the parent wanted or did not want, okay? So then you have this middle bracket, which is the financial needs of family members. Yes, that is a big battleground. And I have the kind of the subcategories under this, the uneven relationships between parents and children. So there's a child that's always cared for. And what I mean is that that's the one who never kind of left home, who's always used to being around. You have the child that's always in trouble, the one who's being bailed out. It could be criminal, it could be financial, those types of things. And then you have the flip side of that is the dutiful child, the one who's always been there taking care of their parents, who feels entitled. Those, again, we're going to talk about some of the circumstances that you find that all the time. So in a family where there is already this sort of sibling rivalry going on, and it goes beyond healthy, and you'll see it when? Every family reunion, every time that you go to a holiday, you're going to see that happening. That's a situation for the parents or even the other family members to kind of see that for what it is and try to resolve that. Because if it does not get resolved now, it will in the estate. There will be some excuse that's used to resolve those unresolved. When someone has no power, they will suddenly get power. Why? Because they will file a suit and they will attack. Okay? The one who's always been in charge will double down and become more onerous than they ever were. And so, like I said, that's where the emotional side of it comes. So as a litigator, you want to know how to do your job, but you have to be really aware of those types of situations. Okay. So now we're going to talk about who can actually have a claim. The first item has to do with a will. So when a person has a will, most people don't have an inherent right to it except for a surviving spouse. Okay? You see this oftentimes in a second or third marriage situation where someone is trying to exclude the spouse for no reason other than that they have their own assets. And what happens is it's not the surviving spouse who has the issue, it's the children of the surviving spouse who feel like when mom or dad got remarried, they gave something to a marriage that suddenly somehow been lost. Okay? So they will go to the surviving spouse who doesn't want to fight and say, Mom, Dad, you have to fight for those rights. And they will go in and they will ask for an elective share, which is anywhere from a third to a half, which upends an entire estate plan. And so what everyone assumed was going to be okay suddenly becomes not okay. And you can imagine a situation where you're in a second marriage situation where sometimes there's an uneasy alliance. No one really makes waves. But I guarantee you the minute that someone makes what they have a right under the law for that elective share as a surviving spouse, suddenly any underlying resentment is going to come up here and like, how dare you take mom or dad's money? And then that trickles to the next level. So all of those siblings, or I should say this, all of the children who have been kind of treating each other as siblings, suddenly it's like Hatfields McCoys and they take their limits, okay? So a trust, on the other hand, is the way that you would exclude it. So when people have second and third marriage situations, you want to do a trust. A trust by law, and this is back to a case from the late 70s, allows the exclusion of anyone, including the surviving spouse. So that's just sort of, kind of black and white, just that's what you want to do with it. Exception is going to be secured creditors who always have claims against the estate, okay? So it's not like you can, and people ask this question all the time, which is why I pose it, is that they say, well, wait a minute, if I put it in a trust, can I avoid people from getting it? No, if someone has a security interest, for example, in your house, right, the mortgage, you can't prevent them from acting on the mortgage. They have an interest in the property itself. Contracts, so you could have a side contract. So we do this all the time. You have people who have estate plans and there's one asset that they want to treat differently. And they'll have a side contract that will spell out the terms of that. Those contracts are actually enforceable over the trust itself. Because a trust in and of itself is really a contract. A will in and of itself is a contract. The difference is that it's one person imposing their will. It's like a unilateral contract. Because I, as the creator of the will, I, as the creator of the trust, am going to send it down to someone. But if I have a contract between two parties, that's more binding because there's been consideration, there's been an exchange, okay? And then the final has to do with corporate rights. We're going to talk a little bit about that with respect to family-owned businesses, which is the corporate structure, the corporations. There are inherent rights that shareholders have. There are inherent mechanics of companies that have to be complied with. And it's not just enough that when someone dies, and in fact, I'm involved in these cases all the time, where someone dies, and remember I told you a situation where dad or mom didn't really take care of business, and you will have family members come in and try to take over companies, except it violates corporation, the laws of corporations because they don't have standing. For example, they were never a shareholder. They're never an officer of the company. Right? They weren't even a person who worked in the business. And suddenly, by virtue of the fact that someone passed away, they think they have that right. Okay? So the next level we have is those unsecured creditors. So unsecured creditors would be everybody's got a bill. Okay? They can make claims against the estate. So even they can be involved in lawsuits. That can cause problems where a debt that someone did not expect suddenly comes up. And people start scrambling about how are we going to take care of the debt. The interesting thing is that most people don't look at debt as being something that the estate should pay out, but rather how do we get away from paying it. There's legitimate ways of doing that, but sometimes, again, those underlying tensions kind of rear up where someone's like, I can't believe that dad or mom was so irresponsible too, and then all of a sudden, all of that kind of underlying tension, and maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, kind of comes up here, and then you have defenses going on. You have another child saying, hey, wait a minute, there's a reason for this. And then what you find out, as we're going to talk about, is suddenly a loan was made to somebody 20 years ago. I didn't know that you had that loan. Maybe the reason that they had the debt is because they were helping bail somebody out. You see? So you can see how a snowball effect happens of distrust based on what appeared to be an otherwise kind of an innocuous issue. So at the bottom line, and this is an important point, which is no one has an inherent claim against an estate, including children, other than what I just said. Children come in and they believe that they're entitled to a fair share. They feel that they're entitled to say exactly what they want to have happen, how the estate's going to be run and all that stuff. A child has zero right. It takes literally one line to cut a kid out of a will. And it simply says, so-and-so is treated as if they predeceased me. There's nothing they can do. There's no inherent rights. It's not fraud. If I have my right mind, want to cut out my child, I have every right to do so. And sometimes, and this is where knowledge, having an understanding of it, I've had situations where I've cut children out, adult children out of wills because they were estranged from their family. Then you have to explain to someone what happened. How do you take care of that? You document really carefully, but then you kind of take off your lawyer hat and then you talk to someone and you explain the relationship that they already know exists and you help them understand why it is that they were cut out. And most times that will calm it down. You know, like I said, there's this balancing between being aggressive but knowing when not to be.
Thank you again for watching this informative session. If you have any questions about what you just heard or want to contact us for legal or business consulting services, you can reach us at 630-230-8434 or email us at kmclaughlin@ma-lawpc.com. Have a wonderful day.